just like a professional athlete that has to maintain and continue to stretch mastery and maturity of their skills, I have to practice my emotional intelligence on a regular basis. So when I get asked this question of how do you practice your emotional intelligence, the one thing that I share most commonly is the thing I do most often. And it is, for me, paying attention to the signal of my energy. So when my energy moves slightly up or slightly down, emotions are approaching the door. They're not quite knocking yet, and they're not ringing the doorbell. And when they're in their approach, the level of my emotional self-awareness skills allows me to know if that emotion is carrying flowers or a battering ram. See, one of the most prolific skills in emotional intelligence is being able to understand yourself so deeply that you can tell which emotion is approaching the door. So pretty much everything that I do for practicing my EQ growth is directly related to noticing that and then allowing emotions to exist without needing to figure them out in the moment. So the reason for that is when I try to intellectualize an emotional experience in the moment I'm having it, I don't do a very good job because the emotion wants to have the space to be felt. And when emotions need space to be felt, they run a cycle, they peak out. Sometimes we get really uncomfortable as the emotion rises to the peak. And that's when we want to intellectualize it because it's uncomfortable. So we want to figure it out, hoping that when we figure it out, we get rid of it. But what ends up happening is when we try to think about the emotion here, we actually fuel it to keep climbing, or we get so uncomfortable that we talk ourselves out of feeling it and we drop it entirely. Now, when we drop emotions entirely, we haven't processed them. They still live within us. They need to be processed, so they will show up as our days continue. If we give ourselves permission and allowance to feel those emotions without fueling them with additional thinking, the emotion will run its course. And then what we can do with our emotional self-awareness is when the emotion runs its course, at this point, when it's come over its hump, then we can get curious about it. Then we can start to think about the root cause of that emotion, the beliefs that I brought to it. And what ends up happening is, because we're not driven by our emotion, our intellect is much stronger here. We're much more able to use other skills in emotional intelligence like reality testing and empathy and assertiveness and flexibility and optimism. Those skills are very hard to use at the crest of an emotional experience. And the skill we need most, yes, it's emotional self-awareness, but this next skill we need most is our impulse control. We have to stop reacting and start noticing. So when I'm asked the question, how do you practice your skills, Teresa Quinlan? Those are the skills that I practice the most. They are at the foundation of one's emotional intelligence.